This is the Ray Lucia Show,
Coming to the best for the answers here.
the one show that helps you make better money moves. The program all about your money, your business, and your life.
You guys talk about a lot of really good information that even I can understand.
Call Ray now at 844-RAY-SHOW, 844-RAY-SHOW. This is the Ray Lucia Show.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and welcome to the one talk show in America that helps you make better money moves. It's the Ray Lucia program, live and in color with Johnny Dean. You got a colored shirt. You're wearing purple today. The color purple.
Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing symbolic about it. I just, happened to pick this morning because I got dressed in the dark, as I usually do, and I was just hoping it matched. So,
That's happened to me before, where I've had two different shoes on or two different socks. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I only own one pair of shoes, so I don't have to worry about
know,
that.
You poor,
I think
poor
one pair
guy
of socks
who
too.
grew
I
up
don't
in
know.
the radio business.
What did it
Johnny
matter what
Dean.
we wore? Half the time people I work with in radio, they didn't even wear shoes to work.
Yeah, but showering every 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to I'm shorten that time.
Hey, a lot on the agenda today. There's a lot of people pessimistic about the stock market. They're pessimistic about everything. And I actually was reading something this morning, and if people will pardon me, I want to read it by Jim Kahn from the Wealth Enhancement Group, a group I know fairly well from the olden days. Yeah, they're out in Minnesota. They're very, very good financial planning firm and so forth. And he wrote about this, and it really struck a chord with me because it drives me crazy. The doomsayers, the doom and gloomers, and then you hear about global warming. We're going to be everything, and I'm not suggesting that it's not real and we shouldn't be concerned about it.
Yeah, we should.
But I am a firm believer in American ingenuity. As you may recall, because you've known me a long time, I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
Whether it be oil or the environment or whatever. We have some very, very smart people in this country and all around the world. And so far, things are doing pretty darn good. And when I read Mr. Kahn, I said, you know what? This dude is on to something. Here's what he had to say. Can I? Do you mind?
Yeah, please. I'll jump in.
Yeah, I know you will.
Where I think it warrants
He
it.
says this, so why discuss all of this stuff about progress and pessimism and et cetera, relating to the stock market? He says, investing, especially in stocks, is a long-term proposition, and so much of your willingness to hold on to your equity should depend on whether or not you believe that this kind of progress will continue. Isn't that what the stock market is all about? It's companies that are making a profit, and if profits continue and they go up, then obviously the stock market over a long time period, and I guess that's the key.
Of course that's the key.
It will continue to go up 5, 10, 20 years from now. We'll see new highs. But he goes on to talk about progress in lots of different areas. Life expectancy, you've heard me talk about this a lot. He says in 1701, the life expectancy was approximately 37 years. That's it. Now it's closer to 81, and as I mentioned yesterday, the day before, and the week before that, and the month before that, when we do these life expectancy calculations, they're talking about the median, or half the people, which means the other half live longer.
Median is right in the middle. So you got half higher, half lower.
Exactly. On the same note, he goes on, according to the Aviation Safety Network, remember back in the day we would talk about how risky it was to fly? Deaths per million airline passengers declined from a peak of 6.5 in 1973. That's per million. That wasn't even so bad back then. To less than 0.2 in 2015. I'm getting on a plane next week. I used to be a really nervous flyer.
I kind of remember that.
I'm not a very nervous flyer anymore. 0.2 out of a million.
Well, technology, some government oversight, more than what we used to have, has been a big help.
He goes on, in 1910, death by fire and drowning both declined from about 11 per 100,000 to about 2. So once again, you're seeing that that whether it's technology or safety or people being more aware, I don't know, it's probably all of the above.
I just had a picture in my mind: death by fire and drowning. You find yourself on fire, so you jump in a lake somewhere and you can't swim. And
Exactly.
I mean, what an awful way to go.
That would be a bad way to go. He goes on about quality of life. Not only are we living longer on average, but our lives are better. Our ancestors in 1870 expected to work about 60 hours a week, whereas today we work about 45, unless you do what Johnny Dean and I do every day.
Well,
we're still doing the 60-hour thing.
Well, but we're way more efficient, even than we were just 20 years ago.
No doubt, and obviously what he's suggesting here is when you're working fewer hours, you have more time for leisure activities, and if you have more time for leisure activities, you spend more time spending money because you're not working.
Well, isn't that the whole point of life? The point of life isn't to work. The point of life is to live.
That's correct. Then he goes on to wealth. Underlying all these lifestyle improvements is the creation of wealth. Until the Industrial Revolution, very little wealth was created. After the Industrial Revolution, wealth building accelerated around the globe. According to the World Bank, in 1820, nearly 90% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty. Today, it's only about 10%, with most of the improvements coming after 1960. I mean, China alone has lifted, Johnny, 800 million people, I should say, out of extreme poverty, and that's only been in the last 30 years. So what is there to be pessimistic about? I just saw a report today, that retirees are living well, better in retirement. There's a T. Rowe Price study that we'll talk about a little bit later. Pretty interesting stuff. You keep hearing, though, in the media and in the news, that retirees are going bankrupt and they're eating dog food and all this other stuff, and it's simply not true for the vast majority of them.
I don't know that I mean, usually people, if they wind up going bankrupt, it's because of some big shock to the system. That's it. But it's usually not a slow glide toward bankruptcy. People will usually adjust their lifestyle in one way or another well before that happens.
So what we're talking about today is pessimism, folks, and here's what was written by this fellow by the name of Jim Kahn.
Now, I'm sorry, pessimism with what? Being able to retire on
just
time?
everything, John. He said something about, if people went to sleep or didn't read a newspaper for 50 years and they picked up the newspaper 50 years later, they say, man, look at how great things are. But with the 24-hour news cycle and cable television and everybody focusing on pessimism, if it bleeds, it reads, or whatever. What's the saying?
Yeah, that's kind of an
it
old
leads.
one.
If it bleeds, it leads. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, nobody wants to hear about, the latest, caterpillar turned to butterfly story.
And relating this to the stock market. So many people are pessimistic about where the markets are because, as you pointed out yesterday, we are literally days away from a 10-year anniversary, the longest bull market in stock market history. And he says this about the pessimists: they've largely been wrong. With the 1960s predictions about population growth leading to famine falling flat. I remember the 60s. I was alive then.
Yep.
And we were talking about that stuff, and everybody was kind of freaked out about it.
Remember that it was called the population explosion.
Population explosion.
And there was a coming, the famine and pestilence and drought and all that
exactly.
stuff. Well, we have the drought. We may have some of the pestilence, but the famine didn't happen.
In fact, he goes on, the incidents of famine have declined. Theories about peak oil have been dismissed as new technologies found ways to extract even more oil from known sources, and the doomsdayers about nuclear conflict, at least so far anyway, have been wrong. We were also concerned, remember the days of Sputnik? Well, you wouldn't remember the days of Sputnik, but that was my nickname in grade school.
Why? Because you just hovered over everybody?
No, because I was built like the Sputnik.
You were a little wiry were you? A little
round, little round.
The round with the little spikes coming
me.
out
Yeah,
for the arms and
yeah.
legs. Yeah.
Little short arms and short legs.
That was it, and all you had to do was
buddy.
beep and go around the world.
He goes on to finish, I believe in the ingenuity of humans to solve the problems of today and the future. After all of this, you still may think that sounds naive, but as history shows, my beliefs are well founded. As a result of my optimism about human progress, I'm also optimistic about the prices of equities, even if I don't know what will happen tomorrow or the next day. And he goes on to anecdotally talk about that. I think it's really important that as it relates to all of us as investors, those of us that have spent many, many years in financial planning, those that want to plan for a financial future with our families, that you believe in human progress and stay optimistic, because we still live in the greatest country in the world. And in 12 years, we're going to be all green, so we got nothing to worry about, really, seriously.
Not where the stock market's concerned.
No.
We'll talk about, got another question for you.
Okay.
When we come back.
A green stock market.
Yeah,
That's
green
coming
stock
up.
market.
Have some
That's right.
opportunities.
I like that.
abound.
Hey.
We'll be back. Stick around on the Ray Lucia Show. Hey, welcome back, folks. This is the Ray Lucia Show. T. Rowe Price says nearly 7 in 10 retirees say they live as well or better in retirement than during their working years. Their top financial concerns. Johnny, I think you could probably pick this one out of a bunch of 100 of different concerns.
The concerned health care would
there
be
it is.
for a retiree.
Just stop there. Just stop there.
For a retiree, yeah.
There are three. Here we go. Health and the cost of health care are the top concerns leading into retirement, followed closely by assets lasting in retirement. Two of the things we cover on this program and should be covered in every financial plan, but most of the pie charters, I will call them, the money management set, don't even get into this stuff. They just want to talk about assets under management. But here's what we know. Nearly 70% of retirees feel somewhat or very concerned about both their health and the cost of health care heading into retirement, followed by 65% of retirees reporting concerns about their assets lasting. Okay, so that's pretty obvious. Mm-hmm. The question is, they're not doing much about it, are they? And the answer is no, they're really not.
The cost of health care?
People aren't buying, as you know, long-term care the way they should. Here's what they say. The top 3 spending concerns in retirement all relate to health care. 72% say long-term care services, like a nursing home, is the top spending concern in retirement, followed by health insurance premiums and out-of-pocket health care expenses. Now, the health insurance premiums is not that bad because you've got Medicare, but to cover everything, the Medicare supplemental policies, which, aren't cheap by any stretch, but one thing I've found is they're very, very effective in covering the costs of health care and retirement.
It's a wonderful program, and my guess is in the next 20 years it will be expanded. They're going to have to do that, and that's the way it's going right now. The interesting thing is that they recognize the problem. Here we go back again. They recognize the problem, but they're not willing to do anything about it right now. I see this not just with health care, for retirees, but younger people who say, disability is a big thing for just about anybody. How many people are out there buying disability policies?
Not very many, and a lot of them are fooled into thinking that their group insurance plan is going to cover 100% of their disability. But I used to do that stuff for a living, as you know, and most of the group plans really, it's like they'll give you 50% of your income up to 40%, up to a maximum of, they could give you 100% of your income up to a maximum of $3,000 a month, and if you're making $10,000 a month, that's probably not going to cut it.
No, that isn't going to cut it. Have you talked to people as to why they're not willing to buy things like long-term, even consider long-term health care insurance? I have my suspicions as to why.
Well, I've talked to a lot of people. I don't know that I've played psychologist or psychiatrist with them, but I think it comes down to greed. I don't think they want to part with the cash.
Yes, that's it. That's my supposition too. I don't want to hand over a pile of cash, $4,000 a year, $6,000, whatever it is, to an insurance company. They keep the money, and I may never even need it.
But they've actually solved that problem, John.
I know.
Many as Pastula and Lynn Rowe and others that we have on this program have reminded us time and time again, there are so many ways now that you can solve the long-term care problem. You can put a rider on a term life insurance policy to provide for, chronic illnesses and critical care benefits and all that stuff for almost dirt nothing. Or you can just simply take your emergency fund and transfer the money from your left pocket into your right pocket and do nothing, earn, a still paltry sum, but get hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential long-term care benefits.
Well, and by doing that, and the nice thing is two things. It's still your money. You still keep the money.
Absolutely.
You have access to the money. You haven't given it away, okay? And if I use it if I need it for long-term care, I might be able to double or triple the amount that I had put in the first place. And if I don't need long-term care and I never use it, my heirs receive sometimes double the amount that was in there, tax-free through a life insurance policy.
Yeah, I think a lot of advisors tend to take the easy way out, something I never learned as an advisor. And part of that has to do with, if you're successful enough to be able to, fold your tent, fold up like a taco, as they say, and walk out. But most advisors just want the business, and so they're not willing to say, well, John, let's just shut down the asset allocation modeling discussion for right now and talk about what's important to you. If you died last night, how's Chris and the kids going to take care of business? Or you get disabled, or you get hit by a Mack truck, or if in fact you get sick, are you willing enough to part with a little bit of that cash that you've been accumulating to solve that problem? Or do you just want to keep putting it into this asset allocation model and pretend that nothing bad's ever going to happen?
Well, then it's on me to decide that I want to pretend that nothing bad's ever going to happen, which is really a gamble.
Well, it is, but it's still... It's so easy to solve the problem. I think it also has to do with the way the financial press has attacked this. You brought something to me before the show today on annuities. It's like everybody goes, oh, annuities are bad. Every study that's been done on annuities in the past 10 years or so has suggested that whether it's a QLAC, which is a qualified lifetime annuity contract, whether it's a fixed index annuity, a variable annuity with guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefits, almost in every single example, the academicians tell us it's the right thing to do in a retirement plan, but the billionaire money managers that are buying all the TV advertisements are changing the mindset for Americans, suggesting that annuities are so bad that, God forbid, I would ever even sell one to you.
Well, it's the power of persuasion in the media that is being hammered home over and over and over. Do you own an annuity? Big mistake. Well, that may be true for a certain segment of the population, but I can ask around and find people that have annuities and say, I tell you what, this thing that saved my life, but I mean, it has saved me from worry as to where my money's going to come from.
There actually have been some studies on that, and individuals that do have annuitized income live longer.
Well, because you're not worried about it. I have a feeling I'm going to be one of those people. I said before, I like to know the worst case scenario. If I know what the worst case scenario is in just about anything, then I know what I'm up against and I can build from there. If I know that this is the least, I'm guaranteed this amount of income, no matter what, I can start from there and worry about everything above that.
But here's the deal, Johnson. You are a layman as it relates to the financial services business. However, you've spent the last 25 years sitting across the desk from me and others like Rick and so forth. And so your perspective comes from a whole different vantage point than back when I first talked to you about getting that, what was it, $100,000 life insurance policy to protect your kids, or whatever you could afford was like $9 a month.
I was 26, I think. We can talk about that sometime too, because I actually had been sold 2 years earlier a cash value policy when I had like $30 a month to spend.
That was a mistake. I by the way, still own my own cash value policies, and there's been all kinds of studies that suggest that having a permanent policy may be one of the best things somebody can do
for the right person.
Not for somebody that only has $26 a month.
That's all I had.
Into a death benefit. Oh, golly, those were the days, weren't they? Johnny Dean and me, Ray Lucia, back with more. Americans haven't thought much about life insurance. That's next. Hey, welcome back, folks. This is the Ray Lucia Show, helping you to make better money moves. Talking a little bit about protection and protecting your families. We're going to move on to a few other topics here coming up in just a bit, and emails just ahead as well. If you'd like to call the show, 844-RAY-SHOW is the number, 844-729-7469. Emails, of course, at raylucia.com, RAYLUCIA.com.
Yes, Ray, RAYSHOW for people.
Ray Show, it's my new name.
Ray Show. It sounds like a sneeze, actually.
Horatio.
Et tu, Horatio? Well, you teased this, and I haven't even looked at this, but this is the headline that also caught my eye. Americans haven't thought much about life insurance, according to a survey. They're not thinking about life insurance? I mean, I have to think about it on a daily basis.
How often do you think about it?
Well, once I have it, I don't think about it at all, which is one of the nice things. If I didn't have life insurance, I would be thinking about it quite a bit.
Yeah,
it's actually a big part of my plan.
I think, once again, this is all common. They don't think about life insurance. They don't think about long-term care. They don't think about annuities. They don't think about stuff because we've made such a big deal about it in the media that it's bad somehow.
What, that life insurance is bad?
Oh, yeah, the life insurance companies are bad.
Well, they're okay. They're like the big evil. Big corporations are always bad. At least that's the perception. A survey done by Edward Jones or somebody says that the respondents said their biggest concern was leaving financial burdens on loved ones if they suddenly become unable to work or if they died tomorrow. Yet, only 41% said they had an individual life insurance policy, and 32% said life insurance was a low priority in starting a family. That's like saying, I am so afraid that I'm going to starve today, but I'm not going to go get any food. That's the solution, isn't it?
$1, you know.
I don't want to burger. What do I want food for? I'm so hungry. It makes no sense to me.
It is true, and the same thing's true whether it's long-term care, disability coverage, or whatever. This is why, by the way, there are people that sell this stuff, all right? So a lot of people, oh, those are salesmen. I don't want to be a salesman. If there were no insurance salesmen, nobody would buy this stuff. That's the real fact.
Somebody's got to sell it somehow. It's like a car. You can buy people say the same thing about car salesmen. It's not the same as it was 40 years ago.
It is, once again, and many of the products have become very, very sexy. I mean, I can show you. You like Roth IRAs? You love Roth IRAs, right?
Love them.
So I could show you a life insurance policy today that gives you pretty much all of the same benefits as a Roth IRA, where the costs are very similar. In fact, there was a study that came out the other day that said the average Roth 401k, the cost of an average Roth 401k was 1.5%. Most life insurance policies, whether they're index, universal life, or some kind of a decent life insurance policy, will give you the same tax-free buildup as a Roth IRA. It'll give you the same tax-free income, if you do it right, as a Roth 401k. But it'll come attached with it a long-term care benefit. We were just talking about that. And one could make an argument that it is comparable, if you give it enough time, over the long run, to some kind of a Roth IRA. And it doesn't come with the pre-age 59 and a half problems, penalties and so forth if you have to take your money out. If you pull money out of a Roth, which you can, tax-free or contributions, you can't pay it back. Well, you can in 60 days, but you can always pay back a policy loan. So there are benefits. I'm not going to say one's better or worse than the other, but I think you're nuts if you don't explore that. If you're younger than, say, age 50 and you're not exploring not only Roth IRAs, but how some of these more whiz-bang life products compete with a Roth IRA.
You have a cost of insurance inside each one of these life insurance policies. Would you say that it's better to, as we talk a lot about cash value and those kinds of policies, to start overfunding that to bring the cost of life insurance down?
Well, it's always better from a cash value perspective.
In other words,
to
should you have extra cash before you consider that?
Yeah, one of the things when we talk about permanent life insurance policies, you don't want to fund them to the minimum. You want to fund them to the maximum because you're getting the tax-free buildup. See, with a Roth IRA, you're locked in like $6,000. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a young female physician the other day from the Bay Area, and she wants to put a lot of money away, like in the tens of thousands of dollars, to try to have an early retirement. Well, once again, you'd have a difficult time doing that with a Roth IRA can only put $6,000 away, right? A young person. Well, this person could put $16,000 or $26,000 or $46,000 away into some kind of an insurance policy, get family protection. But I guess to do the fair comparison, because you should always, folks, do a fair comparison. You take a look at purchasing say a 30-year level term policy. By the way, I've done this, and the numbers look pretty attractive. A 30-year level term policy, and then putting even the $6,000 into a Roth IRA or whatever's left over after the $6,000, and just putting it into one of these insurance contracts that have all the whiz-bang long-term care benefits and everything, and you will find that 30 years from now, you're more than likely going to compete very favorably with a balanced portfolio. It's not going to beat the stock market, but you're not buying it to beat the stock market. You're buying it for a safe place to save money on a tax-free basis, to get tax-free income in retirement and a death benefit for your family. Again, it's not for everyone, but if you're in a reasonably high income tax bracket, if you have a stable job and you can commit to the long term, I think you might find that there are benefits there, especially for a family person, that exceed that of a Roth IRA.
On these things like a universal index universal life, IUL, they're called. You should, my guess would be that you would recommend, especially the fairly young person, probably certainly fund a 401k if they got a match. Do that first.
Of course.
Potentially, would you suggest that they fully fund their Roth IRA?
I would love for them to fully fund their Roth
before
IRA.
they consider.
Well, no, I wouldn't say before. I think it's one of those things where you've got to put it side by side, because there are other benefits that you might get from the life insurance policy that you won't get from the Roth IRA. So it depends.
Yeah, I would say it depends on how much you have, because a lot of young people, they've got $100 a month.
Well, that's different. A person with $100 a month shouldn't be talking about any kind of permanent life insurance policy.
Even if they had $5,000 or $6,000 a year, let's say, for they could fund it to the max.
It's still marginal.
It's still, I would think, it might be better to consider the Roth. When you get up into these things where you have $10,000 a year, you have 15, or whatever it is, a lot of young people don't have that. Probably most of them don't. But as you get into that, I think at least you should take a look at it.
You'd be foolish if you didn't. Again, we're not talking about individuals that have $200 or $300 a month. That's a whole different ball of wax. We're talking people that have $2,000 or $3,000 a month. Husbands and wives. Many times they're younger. They're under the age of 45, 50 years old. Those are the ones that can benefit by some kind of a permanent policy.
Well, I'm sure you talk to people many times who say, I love the idea of a Roth, but we make too much money or whatever, and I can't even contribute. I could do a backdoor kind of thing, but even then it's only $6,000 a year, $7,000, however old I happen to be. I'm looking for ways to save beyond that.
Here's what I suggest to everybody. You've got to do the side-by-side comparison. You see, nobody does that. They just say it's no good because their grandfather or their father told them it was no good, and so it must be no good, or the media says it's no good. The truth of the matter is, when you look at them side by side, you will find that in the very long run, 20, 30 years, you're not going to find much difference in the accumulation values because nobody puts 100% of their money in the stock market. Anything that you put 100% of your money into, like stocks, is going to be volatile. So nobody wants volatility in their insurance policy. So if you looked at a 50-50 or a 60-40 mix and did that comparison with the comparable fee structures and so forth, you will find that for the first probably 10 or 15 years, the Roth IRA is going to be substantially, maybe not substantially, but certainly in the first couple of years, it'll be substantially ahead because that's where all the loading costs are. But 20 years from now, no, it won't be. They'll be very close to even, and I think when you start withdrawing income, then the life insurance policy will actually outperform because of what they call positive leverage. Remember we talked about positive leverage in real estate? There's also potential positive leverage in extracting money from a life insurance policy by policy loan.
Do we want to? Well, what you're doing is you're borrowing from that death benefit that you've been essentially paying a fee for all those years, and you're borrowing from that, and at the time that you finally die, it's paid back by the benefit, the death proceeds.
Yeah, well, there's also something called a net zero interest factor. So if what they do is they guarantee that the interest cost on the loan will be a net zero. So it's a pretty attractive deal. You've got to see it to believe it. Talk to your insurance agent or send me an email and I'll get you in touch with one that is one of those honest guys.
Well, you shouldn't just dismiss everything out of hand.
That's exactly right.
Have somebody run the numbers.
All right, emails are coming up next on the Ray Lucia Show. folks, the Ray Lucia Show. Glad to have you on board. If you have any questions about any of the stuff we've been talking about, please send me an email. I try to get to every one of them personally. At 4:30 this morning, I got to 3 or 4 of them, Johnny Dean.
Bleary-eyed. Oh, no, you're already up for about an hour anyway.
Usually get up early. You do too. But you have to in this business. You sort of get used to it. It doesn't matter what time you go to bed. You just
It does, and I rolled over again. I said, please, I'm tired, and I looked at the clock. It said 3:35. I said, that's it, I'm up.
That's it, I'm up. Yeah.
I'm up.
We're going to do some emails, so hit it, fellas. Let's get it on. Yeah.
Oh, yes, wait a minute, Mr. Postman.
Should I wait for the whole thing? I feel like
No, it's okay.
All right, 'cause it's kind of
Cut
clever.
Elvis off.
Or
the box
Or the box tops. Was there somebody else? No, must be it. Okay, yeah, again, if you want to email, it's raylucia.com. Let's see. This is from Fred. Says, if my wife retires from teaching at age 56, can she make penalty-free withdrawals from an orphaned 403B that she has never rolled over from her previous employer's plan? It's orphaned, Ray.
Yeah, see, I think I missed that the first time I read it. I missed the orphaned word, and that's the kicker here.
Yeah.
Fred, here's the deal. If your wife severs employment from her current employer in the year in which she turns age 55, or of course if she's older than 55, then the answer is yes. She can take penalty-free, although they're all taxable, withdrawals from her 403B plan.
That one 403B.
That one 403B, but I must have missed because it was early in the morning, as I said.
You couldn't see. You couldn't see it. It was you had the candle, like
So I've got to re-email him back.
You were like,
just heard orphan. I mean, I don't look at these things before the show. Orphan. I'm going. Oh crap! I answered the question incorrectly.
Well, I picture you at 4:30 in the morning, like Bob Cratchit, cold in the candle, and you're trying to, read the.
It's really
email.
not that far off, I'll tell you.
No,
but here's the thing. There may be an opportunity if she's still working and teaching school somewhere else with a new 403B plan, the possibility of rolling the old 403B into the new 403B because she can't do it from the orphan one. She doesn't work there anymore. So how would they know if they severed employment if she severed employment from the other company or school district? So the answer to his specific question is no. The answer is there may be a way for her to do it, but everybody should be apprised of the fact that age 55 rule does exist for 401ks, 403bs, 457s, etc.
Yeah, if you sever employment for any reason, you quit or you get fired, doesn't matter. You're just not working there anymore.
Yeah.
If it happens the year you turn 55, you can access that company's 401k, 403b, whatever it is, penalty-free. As you said,
That's
you got to pay
correct.
taxes on it. But, unless I guess she somehow severed employment and it was a year ago. It doesn't sound like that's the case.
No, she's 56 now, but it depends on when she left the other company.
She would have had to leave in the year she turned 55,
That's
and
correct.
it doesn't sound like that's the case. So probably
Now, there are other
not.
rules that people should be aware of, not to kill all of our email time, but
No, that's
it
all
just
right.
reminded me of the whole in-service rollover thing, because a lot of people continue to work past age 59 and a half. I certainly am, and Johnny, my suspicion is you will too. And to the extent that you have a 401k plan and you want to do some more creative things with your money, like purchase some real estate or some alternative strategy, or do laddered CDs or laddered Treasury inflation protected securities, 99% of the 401k plans don't allow the sexier investments. They have mutual funds, stocks and bonds, period. If you want to do something sexy and you're 59 and a half, you can, with most 401ks, go to the administrator and say, I want to do something called an in-service rollover. That would give you the ability to roll over some, probably not all, of the 401k assets, but certainly your vested interest in them, into a rollover IRA, and then the rollover IRA would give you the same ability to do anything you want in a self-directed IRA. So that's something else that individuals should be aware of if they're not.
Yeah, in other words, it's what you might have done once you were retired, which was take your 401k and roll it over into an IRA. There's no tax to be paid on that. You're putting it into a traditional IRA.
The other thing I might mention about the 55, because I've actually done this before for individuals, is they've got this money, they retire at 55 from their company, and they say, well, should I roll it all into an IRA? And I many times say no. Many times I would say, are you going to be spending money? Do you need some income? And they say, well, yeah, I was going to take the money out of my savings account. And from a tax standpoint, that probably doesn't make sense. So what they could do is take some money directly from the 401k plan as income and some money from their taxable account to blend down their tax brackets. So you might figure out from age 55 to 59 and a half how much money you might need to spend. You can't take it from the IRA rollover without paying penalties, but you can take it from the 401k plan. So there's some strategery here, as George W. once said.
Yes, and again, make sure that if you're taking it out of that 401k or 403b, that it is the one that you quit, work at. It's not one that you left when you were 50 or anything like that.
All right, do we have time for another one?
Let's try it. What the heck? Jimmy, I hope we have enough time to answer this. At my job, we have a deferred salary and a Roth salary deferral. Which one is better to put my money in? I'm 48 years old.
So it sounds like he's got a Roth 401k and a traditional 401k, if I'm interpreting that correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
Jimmy, I don't know. I don't know. And I also emailed him early this morning and said, here's my number, call me, give me more information. Because if you're young and you've got many, many years to go, the Roth tends to look a little bit better. But I'll tell you, my strategy for most people is the old 50-50 plan. What we have learned is having multiple sources of income in retirement with the different tax treatments usually works out the best. That would be true for whether it's a Roth, which gives you tax-free income, or as we mentioned, a life insurance policy, which would likely, if you do it right, give you tax-free income. A traditional IRA or a traditional 401k would give you 100% ordinary taxable income. Capital gains assets, which could give you anywhere from a 0% tax to about a 20% tax income. And savings accounts, which mostly would be tax-free, or muni bonds and so forth. And the blending of all of those different silos of money is the way you should enter retirement, because there's also Social Security, which could be taxed from 0 to as much as 85% of the Social Security payments being taxable. So get your tax act together. In the meantime, if you want to email me, go to raylucia.com, click on the Ask Ray button. Now go out and make it a blessed day.
You're listening to The Ray Lucia Show, bringing you the best in money information, answering questions about your biggest financial challenges, talking about your money, your business, and your life. Ray Lucia is not a registered representative of or affiliated with any securities brokerage or investment advisory firm. The views and opinions expressed by Ray and his guests are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors and should not be construed as legal, tax, or investment advice. You should always consult with the appropriate advisors before making any financial decisions. Ray is available to take your questions online at raylucia.com.
Forget about it.
This is The Ray Lucia Show,
Coming to the best for the answers here.
the one show that helps you make better money moves. The program all about your money, your business, and your life.
You guys talk about a lot of really good information that even I can understand.
Call Ray now at 844-RAY-SHOW, 844-RAY-SHOW. This is The Ray Lucia Show.
Hey, don't get that excited.
Go ahead.
Settle down, folks. Welcome. It is The Ray Lucia Show, the one talk show in America that helps you make better money moves. One of the guy with all the moves, maybe not money, but some pretty good dance
No.
I take it back.
No. I don't dance. I do not dance.
Johnny Dean, how you doing, buddy?
I'm all right. I think the applause was, I thought it was heartfelt.
It
The
was
whole
heartfelt.
audience stood up. Then they got real quiet real quick, and they sat back
did.
down.
Yeah.
They know it's 5 seconds, and that's
Because
it.
Adam's holding up the applause sign.
As soon as it goes down, they tend to stop.
Stop, just like that.
So for you folks out there in the audience, please keep applauding if you can.
Johnny Dean in the house. Lots on the docket today, and I know, Johnny, you've lined up a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, I've
wanna
got
ask
some
me.
stuff. I want to ask you, we've talked in the past about you were talking about it in a previous hour, if you happen to be watching or listening. Some people don't. About having multiple sources, the importance of having multiple sources of income at retirement. And by that, I mean maybe a 401k here or something, capital gains tax treatment. It all has to do with the tax treatment. Some Roth income.
Well, I think there's two sides of that story. There's the multiple sources of taxes that you pay, the different silos of taxable income, and then actually having multiple sources of retirement income, a paycheck that comes in from one source, another paycheck that comes in from another, and another paycheck that comes in from another. And what that does is that minimizes the risks in retirement, because you could lose one or more of those sources. The easy example, of course, is if a spouse dies, there's going to be an automatic loss of income almost within months. There would be no more spousal benefit, whichever one is the smaller of the two Social Securities.
Whichever one they got is going to drop off. In some cases, there's pension can drop off if you happen to sign
or be reduced,
or
whatever.
Reduced.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it is. So we're going to talk about that. Also, I ran across this in a magazine that caters to financial advisors, and these are some of the. Somebody was making an argument that you shouldn't advise. They were telling advisors they shouldn't advise their clients to consider annuities or recommend annuities. They gave a whole bunch of different reasons, and I thought I'd bring up a few of these.
Yeah, do
to
it.
you
I mean, I'm happy to,
because
I've studied this. I don't know what this guy's thinking. He hasn't read the Michael Fink studies, the Wade Pfau studies, the Michael Kitces studies, and
Or he's
the
ignoring
David
them.
Blanchett studies. I mean, it goes on from Morningstar. Even companies like Vanguard and mutual fund companies have all concluded that it's one of the best things that retirees can do. So I don't really understand how in a financial planning magazine they wouldn't at least be a little more objective.
I don't know either. It may just be that they needed to fill space. In some cases, this is what
I'm
happens in
sure
the
they
media.
quote the Ibbotson charts all the time, right? You know what the Ibbotson charts are.
Well, I've seen them, sure.
The stocks, bonds, and bills chart that go back, 1800
Years.
and some odd.
Yeah.
Well, Roger Ibbotson at Zebra Capital did a study, and I'll actually pull it out during the break, and I'll quote from it. How's that?
That's good. Maybe we'll start with this because we were just a quick segment here. But I'm sure that there are people out there who have been told by their advisor, or they read somewhere, or they read an advertisement from some billionaire money manager who says you should never consider annuities. And I think if we read this and you either give the counter argument, or maybe you agree with portions of it,
Well, I might.
it's important to get the whole story.
I
rather
think
than-
objectivity is important, but there seems to be no objectivity in what you're alluding
No,
to here.
because here's what I'm hearing again. Never buy this. And I don't want to hear never buy this or always buy
Okay,
this.
so understand where it's coming from. And I understand this very, very well because I made my living for many years based on the amount of assets I had under management.
Sure.
And some of these vehicles don't pay on an assets under management basis. Stick around, we'll talk about that. Don't go away. This is The Ray Lucia Show.
This is the Ray Lucia Show,
Coming to the best for the answers here.
the one show that helps you make better money moves. The program all about your money, your business, and your life.
You guys talk about a lot of really good information that even I can understand.
Call Ray now at 844-RAY-SHOW, 844-RAY-SHOW. This is the Ray Lucia Show.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the one talk show in America that helps you make better money moves. Johnny Dean in the house with me, Ray Lucia. Glad to have you on board. Glad to have you on board, John.
The crowd goes wild. I just feel good. I don't know why. You know,
Yeah,
just the
just
fact
like
that they
James Brown.
acknowledge the
good.
the
We
fact
should
that
play
we're
a little
here.
James today, huh? Maybe,
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that. We got a
844
lot of
Ray
stuff.
Show. Listen, if you want to give us a call, this is the best hour to do it. 844-729-7469. We'll get on it lickety split. Or you can email us at raylucia.com, RAYLUCIA.com. Click on the Ask Ray button. It's very important to click on the Ask Ray
Yeah,
button.
you can't just sit there and stare at it. Nothing's going to happen. You have to actually take action. We would email you, but we don't have your email address. You've got ours.
We've got a lot on the docket today. Of course, I've been talking for eons and eons about retirement planning and financial literacy and all that stuff. But Johnny Dean, if you can believe this, he actually read something from a financial magazine. And
There's some good stuff in there you can find, but there's some
And-
not so good stuff.
And he wants to quiz me on a few things. So sit back, folks. Relax. It is the Ray program where we help you make better money moves and talk about your money, your business, and the Beatles. Okay, Johnny, go ahead.
Well, okay, so here's the deal. As you said, I was looking through a financial magazine that caters to financial advisors.
But by the way, I just thought about that. We should change the name of the show to Money, Business, and the Beatles.
Money, business, MBB.
Yeah, Money, Business, and the Beatles. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, but your name still needs to be in there, so I'm not
okay.
sure.
I
I'm
can
not
change
sure.
my name to McCartney or something like that.
Business and Beatles. Ray B and B. is what it
Ray
is.
B and B.
That may be something.
Yeah, sorry to
think
interrupt.
about.
It just dawned on me that we should do that.
You're an idea a minute.
Yeah, I know.
You know, I don't know what to do with all those. All right. So anyway, I was reading this as you said. And it said here are some things. They cater to financial advisors, so they're talking to advisors. And
But who wrote the article? Did it come from one of the
it was
the
a name
staff
of
writers, or
somebody.
just
the
a
name I didn't
contributor?
recognize. I don't know. Probably a contributor. I don't know if this person's ever met with clients. I don't know if this person was ever an advisor or is an advisor. They may very well be. But if they are, they're leaving out a whole bunch of stuff. I wouldn't want to have this guy sitting across from me because they're not giving you the full picture. Now, here's the deal. They're advising advisors, to tell their clients not to recommend annuities. And they give a whole bunch of reasons why. Now, I know that annuities, I'm going to start off by saying annuities are not for everybody. We know that, all right?
Sure.
Nothing is for everybody, all right? But you cannot say that something is for nobody. That's kind of the inverse.
Yeah,
I don't
what's
like to hear
surprising
that.
to me is all of the academic research over the past 10, 15 years that's come out in favor of the myriad of different annuity contracts, and almost across the board, whether it's a lifetime income annuity or an immediate annuity or a SPIA or a QLAC or a fixed indexed or whatever, almost across the board, the academic research points to these are pretty good deals.
They are. It all comes down to what your goals are. What do you want to have happen? I look at things like annuities. I look at things as life insurance. Any of these products, these are all tools, okay? It's like the tools in your tool shed. I mean, my hammer has a use. If I need a nail pounded in, the hammer is the best use. If I need a ditch dug, I'm not going to use a hammer, but it doesn't mean that hammers are all bad. You know what I'm saying? If I'm a hammer salesman, I'm going to tell you use it for everything. When
If
you're
you
a
had a
hammer,
hammer,
if I had a
you'd
hammer,
hammer
I'd
in the
hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land, but I couldn't dig, okay? If I had a hammer, I couldn't dig. You dig?
I dig.
All right, so anyway, okay, so let me read a
All right,
couple
go,
of these
go,
objections.
go,
all right,
go.
all right. In the consumer press, the discussion about annuities usually evolves around high-cost products and shady sales techniques. Guaranteed income and withdrawal riders and equity index annuities do indeed tend to have high costs. Many agents pitch...
Whoa. Okay, let's just stop there.
Yeah, all right.
Let's stop there. I could recite off the top of my head, and I don't even study this stuff anymore, a half a dozen of them that have no costs.
Exactly.
So what are they talking about here?
I think they're talking about variable annuities, which they didn't even mention. Now, there are some riders that come with costs that you can voluntarily choose to have.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't understand.
No.
He obviously, this guy, whoever wrote this, has not read Dr. Wade Pfau, the preeminent retirement researcher who did a whole piece, a whole white paper titled "Why Bonds Don't Belong in Retirement Portfolios." And the reason he said that is because he replaced bonds with annuities, and he came out with a better retirement result.
Well, okay, here's another one. With IRAs and retirement accounts, the tax deferral element of an annuity is moot. By using these contracts in these accounts, you greatly restrict what clients can be invested in, and you add a layer of complexity that is unnecessary and often problematic. What's he talking about?
Well, he's a moron if he thinks a fixed annuity, a SPIA, is complex. It's not complex at all.
You hand the insurance company some money, they pay you back.
You buy a bond fund or a closed-end fund or an ETF. They're every bit as complicated.
Right.
Come on, that's ridiculous. Now, I think he's also alluding to the fact that because an annuity has tax deferral, it's moot to put it in a retirement account. That's stupid too.
Think about why you bought it.
Think about this. What's the tax treatment of a bond?
You mean
ordinary income.
Ordinary income, yeah.
So a corporate bond, ordinary income.
Sure.
What's the tax treatment on an annuity?
Ordinary income.
When the money comes out, it's ordinary income. So if you have a bond, let's say a CD, right? You have a CD today that's paying 3%. It's a 5-year CD, pays 3%. You go on the search engine for MYGAs. Go out and do this, folks. Type in multi-year guaranteed annuity contract. It'll take you to a site that'll quote certain time periods. And look for a 5-year MYGA. And you'll probably find that instead of 3%, you might get a 4% rate of return. What the heck what's so complicated about that? CD pays 3, MYGA pays 4.
What's the tax treatment on the earnings on a CD, Ray?
It's ordinary income.
Not in an IRA.
Same old, right?
What's the tax treatment? It's exactly the same.
So that's a really stupid argument.
It is. You want another one here?
Sure, go ahead.
Some products have surrender fees, and those must be navigated. They typically have provisions to keep RMDs from triggering surrender fees, but even when the fees are not incurred, the withdrawals can harm the performance of the product or undermine the very guarantees they were touted to make the sale. Explain this one.
Well, there's some truth to the performance side of that, but not very much.
I don't buy it for performance.
Not very much. Well, you get you have a 1-year agreement, all right? So if you violate that agreement within that year, it could have some very minor impact on the quote performance, because it's a year-by-year performance if it's an index annuity. If it's a MYGA, it's the same thing. You buy it for 3 years, you buy it for 5 years, and then you cash it in. Now, anytime you cash in a CD early or an annuity early, there's a surrender penalty. Oh, by the way, if you bought some bonds in 2018, how well did you do? You bought a long bond. How liquid was that? Interest rates went up, you got hosed. So the fact of the matter is there is a surrender penalty even with bonds if interest rates move against you. And so I think from the standpoint of making a decision, if you're making a short-term move, well, you wouldn't want to put money into an annuity. That's where you do your laddered CDs or your money market fund. But if you're going out 5, 6, 7 years, and incidentally, check your bond fund. Check the duration on your bond funds. You'll see it's usually 5, 6, or 7 years. And if the duration is a 7, that means if interest rates move up 1% and you need to sell, it'll cost you 7% of your principal. So you went out and you got 4% on the bond interest, but you lost 7% of your principal. Is that a surrender penalty or not? I mean, this comparison of annuities versus other investments, they make the assumption that there are no risks
No.
in putting money in the stock market or even the bond market, and it's bogus.
And you know, we have no axe to grind. We're just trying to tell you all sides of it. What bothers me is they don't give the other side of this stuff. And it doesn't bother me if you buy one or you don't buy one, but I think at least you should be armed with the facts, and then you can make a decision.
Listen, in early 2018, I'm trying to find this running through while I'm talking. In early 2018, Roger Ibbotson from the famous Ibbotson company that merged with Morningstar actually studied this stuff. I'll try to find it when we come back.
All right, and
I
then
will
I'll
quote chapter and verse from it. How's that?
We'll do that, and then I'll just run a couple more of these down when we come
All right,
back.
sounds good.
This is good stuff.
We're talking, whatever we're talking. What are we talking?
Annuities, we're talking.
Well, we're talking about how financial advisors sometimes miss the boat.
Right.
And I'll also explain to everybody why this guy doesn't like them. How's that?
That's even better.
Yeah, stick around, folks. This is the Ray Lucia Show.
Got a brand new bag. It's a jacket.
you can't always believe what you read, even if you're a financial advisor. And even though I have all kinds of other stuff to talk to our folks about today, Johnny has sort of got me going here.
I know,
buddy.
but this is important, and we don't want to leave anything off the table that's important.
You really got me.
You really got me
going.
Da 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 da.
Yeah.
All right, so we were talking about annuities. There was an argument made, as they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Why nobody should consider, no advisor should recommend annuities, and nobody should buy annuities.
Well, but what is he recommending instead? He's recommending that you put money into bonds and bond funds, I would assume, right?
Doesn't say. Just says don't. Just leave annuities off the table.
Well, you can't just say that. You got to say, well, don't do that. Do this.
He didn't say that.
So if do this means put your money into CDs, or if do this means put your money into bonds, that has been thoroughly investigated by many, many researchers, including none other than the Ibbotson folks, Roger Ibbotson himself, and the folks at Zebra Capital.
Or put it in stocks. How about that?
Well, that's even worse.
That's even worse.
But I said that I would look at the data, and I found it during the break. And here's what they had to say. First off, the study was titled Fixed Index Annuities, Consider the Alternatives. And here's a quick summary. It's not all of them. Fixed index annuities help control financial market risk and mitigate longevity risk. Now, I'm reading this right from the executive summary of an academic study by an academician, if I've said that right.
Smart person.
Using dynamic participation rates and uncapped crediting designs, a generic fixed indexed annuity using a large cap equity index outperformed long-term bonds with similar risk characteristics and better downside protection over the period from 1927 to 2016. Translation: a simple fixed indexed annuity with what is called a dynamic participation rate using the Standard & Poor's 500. That's your generic large cap equity index. Using the S&P 500, outpaced the performance of bonds over a 90-year track record. Pretty good. Now, so he went in and gave us the actual numbers, all right?
Please.
The annualized return for stocks from 1927 to 2016 was 9.92%, with a standard deviation, that's the volatility, if you will, of about 20.
So the higher the standard deviation, the higher the volatility.
The higher the risk and volatility, right. The minimum 3-year return was a minus 27 for stocks, with a maximum a plus 30.6. So that's pretty good. The long-term bonds, the annualized return was 5.32%. The standard deviation was just under 10. The minimum annualized 3-year return was minus 2.32%, and the maximum was 23%. So let's contrast that with the fixed indexed annuity. Long-term bonds, 5.32%. Fixed indexed annuity, 5.81%. So about 0.5% per year better in terms of performance. Next, standard deviation, 9.97 compared to 10.
10
it's
for
essentially the same.
Annuity is the 10.
Right.
It's
Minimum 3-year return, minus 2.3%. Fixed index annuity, can't lose. 0. So there's no loss. And the maximum annualized 3-year return, 23.3% for long-term bonds, 27.56% for the fixed index annuity. In every category, it's either equal to or better than.
And you know, these stats include that big, long 30-year bull run, if you want to call it that, for bonds, where we saw interest rates go from the early 80s, from the teens, down to almost nothing.
Yep. Show me one analyst that thinks bonds will do 5.32% going forward for the next 30 years. I don't know of one who actually believed that government bonds, mind you,
these are guaranteed instruments,
will average 5.32%. The 30 years in the 3s right now. That'd be a pretty big interest rate hike. And then all of the bonds that you own today would lose substantially. Remember, the duration on a long bond is significantly more than, say, a corporate bond at 5 or 6.
Well, in order for to do that on the long side, they would have to jump up pretty darn quickly and then stay there over the next 30 years. If they jump up pretty darn quickly, we've got other problems, and I don't think that that's going to happen.
Most guys, including the now retired Bill Gross, said, I think it was Bill Gross that said it, you're likely to get a rate of return on bonds equal to the coupon. Whatever the coupon is today is what you're likely gonna earn. So there you have it. 3.5%. Maybe that's the bogey.
You mean
Maybe
whether you
it's
sell
4.
it or not?
Yeah, if you hold the bond fund we're talking about
the fund,
here.
okay.
If you're talking about a bond fund, you're probably going to earn whatever the stated coupon is. That's in the 3 to 4% range for most long government bonds.
All right, well, let me give you one more objection that they had against annuities, and you can comment on this. To advisors, they said many clients are converting money to Roth IRAs or taking retirement account distributions to reduce future taxation. Building an additional pool of deferred income makes little sense for these people or others in modest tax brackets. Even high-income clients can be bit by the tax bug if they're not careful. When they take the money out, the deferred income comes out first and is taxable at ordinary income rates. In other words, they've been trying to get rid of the taxable income and ordinary income rates by paying taxes now, doing Roth conversions or whatever it is.
Sure.
So why in the world would they want later on deferred income, guaranteed income that's taxed at ordinary income rates, the way with this whole LIFO treatment that annuities get?
So here's what's interesting about that. This fellow obviously has no clue what in the H he's talking about. Because in order to do a Roth conversion in advance, what do you got to do? You've got to
pay taxes.
Pay ordinary income taxes. Now, in an annuity, a non-qualified annuity, you have the ability to defer those taxes. So he's griping about having to defer taxes and then paying ordinary income later. However, remember, with an annuity, you don't have to do the LIFO treatment. You can annuitize it over a certain number of years. And remember, we've talked about having different silos of taxable income. One of the nice things about annuities is when you annuitize them, a portion of the payment is tax-free because it's a recovery of your principal. The balance of the payment is taxable at ordinary income. He's making the assumption that all of the money's coming out taxed at ordinary income, which would be true if you did a withdrawal and didn't do an annuitization. However, he's not factoring in that once you did pay all the taxes, all of the rest of the money comes back tax-free. So it's just somebody that is obviously biased because they don't make money every single year. Somebody that sells a life annuity probably earns 3%, I'm thinking, is the commission on selling you a life annuity.
And then they're done.
And then they're done. Somebody that puts your money into a systematic withdrawal plan with stocks and bonds is probably making, on average, 1.5% every year. So that's why this guy is objecting to annuitization. The academic research is in. Anybody that wants it, go to raylucia.com. I'll try to keep it below 10 studies. We'll be back. Don't go away. folks, this is the Ray Lucia Show, helping you to make better money moves. Johnny, I just got an email. I do look at these, and it's from Ralph. So Ralph, I know this isn't the email segment, but
it doesn't matter. We can do anything we want. Sure.
So Ralph says this. I don't know if he's an advisor or not. The place to buy an annuity, if you are so inclined, is to purchase it in an IRA. This gives you much more flexibility than if you ever want to sell it. There is no taxable event. Absolutely right. Years ago, I got in an argument with one of the regulators in an audit on this very subject, Ralph. On this, and she looked at me and she said, "Why are you recommending putting annuities inside of an IRA?
It's a tax deferral. Yeah. You're already paying for tax deferral. Why would you pay for it again?"
I said, "Have you called Ralph lately? Have you talked to Ralph? Because Ralph gets it. He understands why. Because it's an ordinary income asset. And that's what spews out of IRAs, ordinary income. It's mind-boggling how stupid people sometimes can be."
Well, it's a very common argument, though. And it was probably more common 20, 30 years ago.
Sophomoric. It's very sophomoric because people today, if you do any kind of homework, online or otherwise, yeah, you'll see all the negative stuff, but those are the pundits. When you get to the Lauren Minches, who's an actuary who has studied this, I'll quote from her stuff here in a moment if you'd like, or Dr. Wade Pfau, or David Blanchett over at Morningstar, or Moshe Malevsky, York University, and the list goes on and on and on. So anybody that does their homework could refute every one of this bozo's arguments.
Well, the tax deferral thing inside the tax deferral, I think when ordinary income rates and capital gains rates were close or the same, and that goes back 30 some odd years, you might have been able to make an argument one way or the other. Not anymore. Not anymore. If your ordinary income assets anyway, it can sit in an IRA, because IRAs, all income coming out of an IRA is taxed at ordinary income rates, including capital assets like stocks.
Yes, indeed.
Which is easy for people to forget.
All right, so I have to move on now. Because
I'm enjoying this, though. All right, let's move on.
Valentine's Day, I was reading this, and since my wife just came in and brought me my phone, that's why I was not able to get to emails before, because I left my phone at home.
She delivered it.
And I don't even live nearby. I was going crazy without it.
You don't even live nearby.
I know. She delivered it. That's my wife for you.
Yeah, there you go.
And so I've got to do something really special for Valentine's Day. Don't tell her. I still haven't figured out what in the heck it is.
I thought you both, didn't you say just the other day that you both say, "I won't buy you anything, you don't buy me anything, let's forget it"?
Oh, yeah.
And then you say you wind up...
I always end up doing that and I get in trouble.
Yeah, I know.
But I think this year we have Gianna with us for Valentine's Day. So.
Gianna is granddaughter number 1 or 2, I forget.
No, she's number 3.
Oh, 3? Okay.
Yeah, she's just turned 13. She's the sweetest
13?
girl on the planet.
I was going to say, is she like 4 now?
No, she's 13. But this headline,
all right.
Couples are healthier, wealthier, and I can attest to this, less trim. This just in. A study, this is actual studies, you know me, I'm an academic research guy, was published suggesting that being married boosts your chances of surviving cancer. How's that grab you?
I don't see a cause and effect there.
There is no cause and effect, but it's a study.
Okay.
I think it's out of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. What is tropical medicine?
I think that's that woo-woo stuff that,
the stuff in Denver. No, it's the stuff in Denver that they're trying to legalize.
Oh,
the magic
that.
mushrooms.
Oh, okay.
Here's what they said. Being happily married can also boost your chances of living a long life. When researchers combined the results of numerous studies, they found that husbands and wives were 10 to 15% less likely to die prematurely. There you go. Unless it's a Sicilian family, then all bets are off.
He's kidding, of course.
Of course.
Okay. I'm not sure I see cause and effect, other than the fact that as you get older, it's nice to have a companion.
Well, okay. Separate research has revealed that individuals in conflict-ridden relationships have higher levels of inflammation, which is associated with many age-related diseases, as you know, weaker responses to vaccination, and slower healing rates. So you don't want that inflammation stuff.
So what? Do you have
the moral of the story is
just
get
married,
married, stay married, and you will have, according to this study, less loneliness,
Yeah, unless it's all conflict, as you just said.
Well, yeah, you'll be happier.
Yeah.
You'll have more. This actually says this, John.
Yeah.
Surely single people have. Oh, single people have more. Oh, sorry.
And don't call me Shirley.
We'll leave that one because it's a family show. How to keep your friends working and obesity, all that stuff. The one thing that is interesting is couples are happier, wealthier, live longer, and have more satisfying sex lives than single people. However, married men are 25% more likely to be obese or overweight than their unmarried counterparts. So there you have it. It's why I'm fat. See that?
Well, it's your part again. Let's go back to the Sicilian thing. It's some of the best food you're going to eat. What are you going to do? Say no?
You know, you couldn't say no to my mother and my grandmother. She'd smack me with a wooden spoon right on the hand.
Well, and you deserve it. I've had some of that
yeah.
cooking, and
That's if you're doing the old fatso thing where you take the Italian bread and you dip it in the sauce. Did you ever see
from the movie with Dom DeLuise?
Did you see it with Dom DeLuise?
No, you told me about it.
Oh, what a great! It's a great movie. I mean, and if you're a Sicilian and an Italian, you can really relate to making the sauce, the 6-hour sauce, and then sneaking in when the grandmother's not watching. You dip your bread in, you eat it.
I thought that's the only way to eat it.
That is the only way to eat it. But
in fact, as I understand it, it's even proper etiquette in these circles to, when you have all the leftover sauce or gravy, whatever, on your plate, is to take the bread and sop it up all the way around, so you have almost a clean plate.
By the way, it is called gravy.
Yeah, it is. I can't call it that because I'm not Italian. I'm not allowed to say that.
Well, you come from your wife comes from an Italian family.
Yeah, but that's
though,
not
right?
blood. That's that's by marriage. Her father's side is Sicilian, so she could kind of do it. I can't. I've got none of it.
They don't let you dip the bread?
They don't.
Skeeve that.
My wife, she says that's uncouth or whatever it is. She won't let me drink milk right out of the bottle either, but that's a whole other story.
Well, first of all, don't drink milk. It's really bad for you.
Oh, it is not. I think it's all right.
Teasing. What do I know?
Good.
My wife doesn't drink milk. She does coconut milk and almond milk and all the foo-foo milks that are really popular today.
No, I just want right out of the cow.
I don't even drink milk. I don't even like it.
I like it. I just don't buy it anymore.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
You're next up.
Well, all I have is some. I like to run these numbers every once in a while. It's by the numbers, and I know you've gotten this.
Oh, you know what? But before you get into that, I did say that I was going to quote from this other study. This is really fascinating.
Oh, wait, is this going back to the...
yeah, this is the Lauren Minch's actuaries.
the annuities?
I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought you were, but then you said you were done talking about it.
I thought I was done talking about it, but I guess I'm not. The point that I made is she did this massive white paper. Well, it's not that massive, but she even quotes Fow and some of the others that have produced documentation on why bonds don't belong in retirement portfolios. But what she actually said, and she stuck her neck out and put recommended percentage of fixed income allocations to annuities. And I have it right here. And I would highly recommend that you look at it. It's called, her name is Lauren Minch's FSA VP Product and Actuarial Blueprint Income.
Cool.
This was May 30, 2018. Blueprint Income. I have no idea who they are. But in doing my research, this is what I found. That if you're greater than 10 years left until retirement, she says you should have 50% of your money in fixed, not variable, those fixed income type annuities. Now, I didn't get into the specifics, but I'm sure she's talking about any kind of a fixed or index or whatever type of an annuity. At 9 years, and she's basically adding 5%. And this is fascinating. At year 0, you're going into retirement. She agrees with Dr. Wade Fow. No bonds, 100% of your fixed income allocation into income-producing annuities. Again, I'm not recommending that. I'm just suggesting that the actuaries and the academic studies all come to the same conclusions. And they're the ones that got the calculators. They got a better calculator than I do.
You talked about comparing bonds and I think it was fixed index annuities over the course of 5 years, 10 years, whatever it happens to be. And it turned out through that whole 90-year study that the fixed index annuities beat the bonds every time. Sometimes by a little, sometimes by more, but on average, it was something like maybe 1% or a little
Well,
bit
you're
less.
going to find in any given year. I mean, if interest rates were to go down substantially,
Well, and that's-
a long
of
bond's
course.
going to be double digit.
Well,
But
we saw that
on average.
Right.
The fixed index
darn
annuities
it.
have outpaced the performance of bonds.
Well, when you tie a fixed index annuity, it's tied to an index. A lot of times, and you mentioned the S&P 500. I just want to read a stat when we come back that may explain why those annuities beat the bonds.
Yeah, well, when you're tying it to the stock market does pretty good.
You want some?
Most
I'll
of
give
the
you the
time.
numbers.
Oh, you got the numbers.
I'll give you the numbers, but we got to do it
All
when we
right.
come back.
All right, we'll do it when we come back. We'll be back. Don't go away. It's the Ray Lucia Show. And welcome back, folks. This is the Ray Lucia Show. We're not gone yet. We are not gone yet. Johnny Dean in the house. Now, before we get to the email segment, John was going to give us some numbers.
Yeah, some numbers, some actual numbers. You talked, as I said before the break, about comparing the study that compared fixed index annuities to the performance of bonds over a certain period of time, over the 90 years.
Right.
Fixed index annuities always came out on top.
Yes.
We were talking about the kind that are tied to a big index, like the S&P 500. I think that's the most common one. Well, anytime you anytime a product is tied to something like the S&P 500, where you don't lose money if it goes down, but you're credited capped on the upside,
right,
it's probably going to outperform. Let me just give you a couple of quick numbers here. Since 1950, Ray, there have been 60 different 10-year periods, right? So you have 1950 to 59, 51 to 60.
Rolling periods.
Right, yes. 60 different 10-year periods. The S&P 500 index, according to BTN research, produced an average annual total return of less than 7% during 15 of those 60 periods. In other words, 25% of the time. 19 of the 60 periods, 32% of the time, resulted in an average annual total return of at least 14%. At least 14%, 32% of the time. Now, if I've got a product that is tied, where my interest rate or my earnings rate is tied to the S&P, an index like the S&P 500, and I have stats like these, it doesn't surprise me that they're actually going to beat bonds over that 90-year period of time.
Yeah, so first off, there are a couple things that we should make clear. When you look at these fixed index annuities, you're not getting dividends.
No.
So when they quote 14% for the S&P, that many times they're including dividends. Dividend yield is about 2%. So
all right, so take 2% off.
A couple of percent
But
off.
even so.
But I think the more important thing, not that your numbers aren't important, John, but the more important thing is, are you willing to bet on the economy growing? And if you are, then the stock market will continue to do well. And if the stock market continues to do well, then those investments that are tied to the performance of the stock market are likely to do well. But make no mistake about it, it's a bond alternative. It is not a stock alternative, which brings me to an email I just got. Hit it, fellas.
You've got mail.
This is from Joe L.
We couldn't have timed this better.
I know, it's great. And Joe's a great guy. I've had other emails from him. So he says, and it's all in caps, by the way. So Joe wants to know.
Joe's shouting.
He's shouting
He's
from my
excited.
phone.
He's
This is right on my
excited.
phone. Can you please give examples of people that probably do not need a fixed indexed annuity?
Great question.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of examples. Number one would be younger peeps. You know, I don't think my 13-year-old would do well. Remember, if it's non-qualified money, meaning not IRA or 401k type money that has a pre-age 59.5 penalty like an annuity does, then anybody that might need to gain access to the money before 59.5
Gonna be penalized.
shouldn't buy one. But remember, we're talking about whether or not these types of investments belong in a retirement portfolio. So if it's not a retirement portfolio, they don't belong. So that's the easy answer. Also, if you're wealthy and you got big pensions and you got a bunch of real estate income, remember the concept of the fixed index annuity is to replace bonds in the retirement portfolio. Now, there's all kinds of people that are still going to buy bonds. I'm not saying every bond in America should be replaced with a fixed index annuity. There's wealthy people that buy tax-free municipal bonds for the tax-free income. Certainly is not supposed to compete against tax-free munis and so forth. But the thing that I think is really important is, Joe, when you're doing retirement planning, it is hard for me to believe that there's going to be a bond allocation that couldn't be in some way either replaced or in addition to your bonds with a fixed indexed annuity. And then where the planning comes in is typically when you annuitize a percentage of the assets in the retirement plan, it gives you the ability to kick up the amount of aggressiveness in the equity portfolio, which is why when you add annuities to a retirement plan, you end up with more income while you're alive and more legacy if you die at normal or beyond normal life expectancies. So it's the win-win in retirement planning, and that's why there's so many actuaries and finance professors that are big on them. Now, whether you use the index or the life annuity and all that stuff, that's between you and your financial advisor. And I know that Joe will email me sometime in the future and ask about that, because he's emailed me.
You should always ask those questions. You can ask them of us, but you should also be asking your advisor if they happen to be selling you have to have an annuity.
Yeah, thanks for the email, Joe. Good to hear from you again.
All right, so let's do this one from, I think it's Ron. Ray, I wanted to gift each of my 6 grandchildren with contributions for custodial Roth IRAs because I did not want to limit the contributions to be used for education, but for anything that they might decide they want from it. Maybe it's early retirement, start on retirement, whatever. But my grandchildren are under 10 and they have to have earned income. Yes, they do, for the Roth.
True.
Are there any other ideas you have for me until they're old enough to receive a gift from me toward a Roth IRA someday when they work?
Well, there's really nothing that would resemble a Roth IRA. You can put them in a growth kind of mutual fund, gift them money and put money in a mutual fund for them. You know, I've talked to a lot of grandparents, and one of the things that I have recommended from time to time, because this guy's obviously doing pretty well, and depending on how old he is and what his health is and whether or not he's married, I might consider doing some kind of a second to die life insurance policy, naming the 6 grandkids as beneficiaries. Because it sounds to me like he's not really using it for education. It's more for maybe a down payment on a home or giving them a head start on their own retirement. And if this guy's like 70 years old and the kids are 10, by the time the kids are 30 years old, he's probably a goner, right?
Well, sure.
So they do a second to die life insurance policy. The kids, when they're 30 or 35 or 25 or whatever, inherit a big lump sum of money tax-free. He could name the trust as a beneficiary. The trust can watch over the money so that the kids don't blow it and all that stuff. But I think, Ron, this is where real financial planning can make a lot of sense. He might even consider having each of the kids do their own index universal life insurance policy. That would be the closest thing to a Roth if you wanted to make contributions into it. I like the other strategy better.
Well, it's a tax-free. It's tax-free life insurance.
It's tax-free, and it would give the biggest bang for the buck. Take a look at it. Talk to your financial advisor about it, or email me. Go to raylucia.com. Click on the Ask Ray button. Now go out and make it a blessed day. Bye-bye.
You're listening to The Ray Lucia Show, bringing you the best in money information, answering questions about your biggest financial challenges, talking about your money, your business, and your life. Ray Lucia is not a registered representative of or affiliated with any securities brokerage or investment advisory firm. The views and opinions expressed by Ray and his guests are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors and should not be construed as legal, tax, or investment advice. You should always consult with the appropriate advisors before making any financial decisions. Ray is available to take your questions online at raylucia.com.
Forget about it.